Jordan Peterson, you're just wrong on this one. Now, in this last clip, Jordan Peterson gives a brilliant explanation for why it is that he believes that there's actually some moral background to what it is that Russia's doing, and he gives a surprising view of the morality of the West, or his view of it. I obviously have a very different point of view. I see things not being nearly as dark, which is maybe why we call ourselves the optimistic American. But either way, listen to what Jordan has to say about the morality of the war, and you might watch his whole video so you make certain that it wasn't anything that we clipped or cut. And then hopefully in the end we'll give the defense to why we think that if you're as part of the West, you're on the right side.
Putin himself is in principle a practicing Christian, and it appears that he has been strongly influenced by such ideas. The degree to which Putin's worldview and actions are shaped by his professed Christianity is a topic subject to appropriate debate, but the same can be said about the views and actions of all who adopt or claim to adopt a faith. I certainly feel somewhat more comfortable knowing that Putin regards himself, however indeterminately, as subordinate to something beyond himself, as the alternative is dreadful to contemplate. That would be the absolute moral presumption of someone such as Stalin. Regardless of the depth or genuineness of his belief, however, it is beyond dispute that the Russian leader frequently speaks of his country's role as a bulwark against the moral decadence of the West, and that he speaks in philosophical and theological terms to a degree unthinkable in a Western leader, all of whom tend towards a condescension in such matters that has reached its apotheosis in Canada's Justin Trudeau, New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern, and U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris.
I have to admit, I'm a bit taken back by any comparison of the morality of Western democracies to the authoritarian governments of China and Russia. In fact, I don't see their morality at all. But Jordan made the point that Putin may be partly driven by his religious beliefs and his rejection of the decaying morality of the West. When asked in 2007 if there was a supreme being, he declined to answer. Yet none of us know what he really believes. Most of us want to be known for our intentions, yet it is our actions that define us to others. And his actions are clear. They are far from most people's versions of morality. My bias is, I see morality from the view of individualism. I see it from the view that we all have rights endowed upon us by our Creator, that each of us are unique and worthy of human dignity and human rights. The Western belief in human rights was shaped by the Reformation. Martin Luther believed that you could not pay a church for indulgences. He believed that each person had a direct relationship to God and that he could reject or accept him. But all of us was worthy of dignity. Later, Jean Rousseau used this concept in The Social Contract. If God owed each of us dignity as individuals, didn't government owe us the same thing? But it is arguable that no Martin Luther, no Reformation. No Reformation, no society based on the rights of the individual. From this belief would come the idea that slavery was immoral, civil rights, human rights, and equal rights. In many respects, even capitalism, as it values the individual's ability to own what it is that they create. But human rights and every individual being worthy of dignity is as much a myth as our belief in angels, because either you believe that there is a natural order that supersedes man on these issues, or you believe that it's just about power. Now, possibly, it's because the Russian Orthodox Church was not affected by the Reformation. Possibly it's because the Russian Orthodox Church is a vassal of the Russian government, and all that matters is what Putin says. Or maybe it's because Putin is not really a believer. In any event, one thing is clear. He does not value the rights of individualism, not human rights, civil rights, equal rights, or property rights. He subscribes only to the morality of power. Jordan worries about the immorality of woke culture. I worry about the immorality of both woke culture and the alt-right. I'm puzzled why the left would ever allow the abandonment of teaching of Western civics where individualism was born? Why would they tolerate a woke culture that classifies people by race and divides them by talking about the oppressed and the oppressor? And I'm puzzled by the right, who would tolerate people who would use violence to attack the Constitution. An alt-right willing to put individual liberty aside for some collectivist vision. In Dr. Bash's and my book, Addictive Ideology, our thesis is based on the idea that those ideologies that become violent are based on the oppressed and the oppressor. The alt-right becomes physically violent. The woke left practices reputational violence. Both disregard people as individuals. Both see themselves as oppressed by other races. One uses terms like racial superiority, while the other uses terms like white privilege and the patriarchy. Both separating us by the color of our skin and ignoring the content of our character. These groups, however, they're a small minority in America. Most of us are offended by both of them. I know there's nasty comments on our Twitter feeds, but it's anecdotal. I recommend just quit reading them. While polls show them as clear minorities, unfortunately through low turnout primaries, they have a voice that's disproportionate to their numbers. Through nightly news that likes to amplify the extremes and social media that wants longer engagement time, they have the ability to seem much bigger than they really are. But they are in fact a small minority. And again, I don't agree with things like forced use of pronouns by a government, nor do I support a woke culture or the 1619 Project. But I don't see how those groups provide any justification for Putin's action. I've seen polling where even among American college students, the value of woke culture is being rejected. Maybe their voices are drowned out, but the overwhelming majority see these views as a novelty of young college students, but reject any wholesale adoption of them. Putin represents an entirely different view of humanity. I don't want to go back to a world that looks like the one that existed before the American world order. Now maybe it's an important question that we also ask, why does the survival of Western liberal democracy even matter? Why does our American republic matter? I suppose this is always subjective, but for me it matters because we hold truths. Not your truth or my truth, but universal truths. The most important truth was that the individual was the reason for our existence. In the Declaration of Independence, the moral document of our Constitution, we laid out the idea that all people were worthy of dignity, that each was to be seen as an equal by our government. Our government has done a great many things, building bridges and dams, police departments and public schools. We even put a man on the moon. But the greatest thing our government ever did was to place the individual over itself. From this, not only did a great power rise, but we made incredible advancements in human progress. Through the power of the individual, we created human flight. We created the first automobiles, massive ships that would cross the ocean, and powerful industry that could employ hundreds of millions of people and create products always more affordable to the average person. In addition, that system lowered poverty, child mortality, increased literacy. Don't let the threatening domestic authoritarian voices attempting to corrupt our values here at home empower you to see those governments that are completely engulfed with corruption and a totalitarian structure as somehow morally equivalent. While I find woke culture abhorrent to the ideas of an individualistic society, we should ask, why are young people attracted to it? I'm not talking about the manipulative, political correct authoritarians who have the dark triad psychology. I'm talking about those young people sucked into its wake. Young people attracted to woke culture because they're looking for a better world. They want to stop racism, misogyny, and discrimination. They want to end poverty and illiteracy and oppression. They want love and belonging. They want to lift the human condition. They want all the right things. They're just looking in all the wrong places. And we can't sell them on who we are with a pessimistic point of view. We can't sell them based upon a view that all is lost in the West. We can only sell them by reminding them of our attributes. Now, this certainly is important in education. It's important from our leaders. But it's also important for each of us to be willing to stand proud of who we are. The idea that woke culture has already corrupted the values of our democracy to the point of our morality is just lost on me. My view of who we are is not that dark. We have a lot more to go. There's a lot in front of us. It will even be more amazing than our past. The best is yet to come. We will continue through the powers of a society centered on the individual, creating driverless cars and providing powerful medicines that will cure major diseases, and maybe will even extend human life. It may well be that our private sector beats government to extend human life to Mars, and in the process will feed more people, improve living conditions, and improve human progress. It is undeniable that the wealth that exists in the world is concentrated in those countries that promote freedom and free markets. Europe, Japan, Australia, Canada, and the United States. We're the buyers, and most everyone else in the world is sellers. And while free markets serve mankind, we have the capacity to create the products to sell to ourselves. They today do not have the ability to survive without us as buyers. While Vladimir Putin and postmodernists attack it as the golden billion, there is a reason why we have the advantage. That is, so long as the ideas, the free markets, free enterprise, and the nations that place the rights of individuals at the center control the world order. If they do not, the fate's going to be something much darker, much less hospitable, lacking of freedom, property rights, civil rights, human rights, and the human condition is going to suffer. But I believe that these values will survive, certainly in America. It will survive regardless of the alt-right or the woke left who make up that minority in America. That's not to say we shouldn't be concerned. We need political reforms to decrease the disproportionate voice of the extremes. We need educational reforms to teach civics and the power of free markets. We need our citizens to understand their role in self-agency. We could use a little less apocalyptic views of our demise, the negative bias fed by the nightly non-news and social media. And while we should keep those extremes in the alt-right and the woke left in check, they're not going to become a majority. And in America, well, a majority still matters. Long ago, in an afternoon dinner discussion, I sat as a 30-year-old mayor and listened to Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan reminisce. It was a highlight of my life to see these two men on opposite political sides of one another share warmth and concerns for one another. I asked Ronald Reagan, what was the most important thing that I should know as a leader? And he said in that voice of his, as his head shook from side to side, well, Mayor, that's easy. Always make sure that you leave them with hope. Later in the discussion, Pierre Salinger said something to me that I will never forget. He said Reagan and Kennedy were so much alike. I was so puzzled by that comment. I said, how can these two be the same? Well, he said, both of them are optimistic about our future. They just have different ideas on how to get there. So I'm going to leave you with this last thought, and that's the importance of faith. I understand people are losing it. They're losing faith in us. They're losing belief. Well, if you can share optimism, do so. Believe in who we are. Believe in our ability to make things better. Have faith and believe in us. Thank you. God bless, and I appreciate you all being here tonight. Thanks for joining the Optimistic American Show. Now help us grow by subscribing to our channel. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a like and a comment. There is so much more that we have planned. We can't wait for you to embark upon this journey with us.